In the 1970s, people served raw ground beef mixed with raw egg at birthday parties. Sea turtle soup was a delicacy, and homemade moonshine, practically a tradition. No one asked about permits or pathogens. If it tasted good, we ate it. But here's the shocker. Many of those foods are now illegal. So what changed? And what exactly were we putting on our plates back then? Let's take a bite out of the past before the health inspectors show up. Tiger meat sandwiches. Would you eat raw hamburger meat straight from the fridge on purpose? In 1970s Midwest, that wasn't a dare. It was a party dish. They called it tiger meat, a mix of raw ground beef, chopped onions, salt, pepper, and sometimes raw egg served on crackers. It showed up at potlucks, holidays, even Christmas parties. Kids would grab a bite without blinking. And no, it didn't come from a tiger, but it might have made your stomach growl for the wrong reasons. Today, serving raw ground beef is a major food safety violation. The USDA flat out warns against it, citing risks of E. coli, salmonella, and worse. In most states, offering it to guests, especially at public events, could get you shut down or fined. And yet, folks back then didn't just eat raw meat. They sometimes drank raw milk, straight from the cow, no pasteurization, no questions asked. So what's the deal with unpasteurized dairy, and why is it also illegal in many places today? Unpasteurized dairy products. Ever drink milk that came straight from the cow, still warm, still frothy, no labels, no filters? In the 1970s, that wasn't just normal, it was wholesome. Especially in rural America, raw milk was a way of life. Families poured it over cereal, churned it into butter, or sipped it by the glass. Some folks even swore it tasted better and kept you stronger. Trouble is, it also kept some people in the hospital. Unpasteurized milk can carry dangerous bacteria like Listeria, Salmonella, and E. coli. That's why today the FDA bans its sale across state lines. Many states restrict it altogether or require special permits and warning labels. And selling it under the table? That could land you in serious legal trouble. But back then, people didn't fear germs in milk. They feared losing their milk cow. Of course, milk wasn't the only thing folks consumed unfiltered. Some even made liquor at home, in backyard stills, far from the eyes of the law. Homemade moonshine. Ever walk into a shed and smell something sharp, sweet, and just a little illegal? That was homemade moonshine, and in the 1970s, it wasn't hard to find. Especially in the South and Appalachia, families passed down secret recipes like heirlooms. They distill high-proof liquor in backyard stills, often hidden under tarps or behind chicken coops. It wasn't sold in fancy bottles. It came in mason jars and burned like hell going down. Technically, moonshine was illegal even back then. But enforcement was loose and most people saw it as tradition, not crime. Today, making distilled spirits without a federal permit is a felony. Forget taxes. If you get caught, you're looking at thousands in fines and even prison time. Still, there was pride in that homemade firewater. And in the 70s, folks didn't just make their own booze. Some even served horse steaks at dinner. Yes, real horse meat, cooked medium rare. Horsemeat steaks. Think beef is controversial? Try serving horse steaks at your next family cookout. In the early 1970s, that wasn't as shocking as it sounds today. Horse meat was available in butcher shops and even appeared on school lunch menus during tough economic times. It was lean, high in protein, and cheaper than beef, so some families saw it as a practical choice. In immigrant communities from Europe or Central Asia, it wasn't taboo, it was tradition. Legally, it was fair game until 2007 when Congress defunded USDA inspections for horse slaughter. Without inspection, sale for human consumption became effectively banned. Even in states where it's not technically illegal, good luck finding a supplier willing to sell it. Social stigma sealed the deal. In America, horses had become pets, not protein. Still, people in the 70s weren't squeamish. They cooked what they had, and sometimes that included exotic meats from land or sea. Like sea turtle soup, a dish once served in high society, now banned worldwide. Sea turtle soup. Ever tasted a spoonful of soup that could land you in federal court today? In the 1970s, sea turtle soup was a high-end delicacy, especially among East Coast elites and in old-school supper clubs. The meat, often from green sea turtles, was prized for its rich texture and subtle briny flavor. You could even buy canned versions in specialty markets. Some recipes dated back to colonial America, served at banquets and weddings with pride. But the popularity came at a cost. By the late 70s, sea turtle populations were in sharp decline. Then came the Endangered Species Act of 1973. And by the 1980s, harvesting or selling sea turtles became a serious crime. Today, even possessing turtle meat or eggs without special permits can lead to heavy fines or jail time. Yet back then, no one blinked at sea turtle bisque. And turtle wasn't the only exotic meat on the menu. Whale steaks were still legal too. And yes, people really ate them like roast beef. Whale meat steaks. Imagine slicing into a thick, juicy steak and realizing it came from a whale. In the early 1970s, that wasn't a scandal. It was dinner in certain coastal communities. Whale meat, dark red and dense like beef, was still legally sold in select U.S. markets. It showed up in immigrant neighborhoods, particularly among families from Norway, Japan, and Alaska, where whaling was part of cultural heritage. Some restaurants even served it grilled, just like a sirloin. That all changed in 1972 with the Marine Mammal Protection Act, banning the hunting, selling, or harassing of whales in U.S. waters. Then in 1986, a global commercial whaling ban followed. Today, only a handful of native communities are allowed to hunt whales for subsistence, and the rest of us? Strictly hands-off. Still, in the 70s, it wasn't rare to find whale steaks in the freezer aisle. And while that meat was rare, some meats were too common, like venison, but only if you butchered the deer yourself in your own backyard. Home butchered venison. No joke. That was backyard butchering, and in rural America, it was just part of life. After a successful hunt, folks would string up the deer from a tree branch or jungle gym, hose it down, and start cutting. The meat went into family freezers or got passed around to neighbors. No inspection, no paperwork, no questions. Sometimes a neighbor would stop by with a Ziploc full of venison in the same bag that once held Lego bricks. Today, this kind of casual meat sharing, highly restricted. Most states require permits for hunting and tight rules on processing and distributing game meat. Selling it? Completely illegal unless it's farm-raised. But back then, it wasn't just legal, it was neighborly. And folks who processed their own meat, they also foraged their own roots and brewed teas that would later be banned by the FDA. Like Sassafras root tea, a backwoods favorite with a toxic twist. Authentic sassafras root tea. It smelled like childhood. Sweet, spicy, earthy, sassafras tea was comfort in a mug. For generations, folks in the South and Appalachia brewed it from roots they dug up themselves. Some drank it to soothe colds, others just liked the taste. And here's the kicker. It used to be the main flavor in root beer. That familiar taste, pure sassafras. But in 1960, lab tests showed that saffrole, a compound in sassafras oil, caused liver cancer in rats. By 1976, the FDA banned it from all food and drink products. Even homemade sassafras tea became a legal gray area. Today, commercial versions use sassafras flavoring with the saffrole removed. Back then, nobody worried about toxic oils. They worried more about running out before Sunday dinner. But sassafras wasn't the only risky thing people put in their mouths. Some baby food brands added formaldehyde as a preservative. For infants, really. Canned baby food containing formaldehyde. You'd expect baby food to contain carrots, peas, maybe a little applesauce. But in the early 1970s, some brands quietly added formaldehyde, the same chemical used to preserve dead bodies. Why? It extended shelf life. Formaldehyde helped canned food look and smell fresh longer, especially in warmer climates without strong regulation. It wasn't listed on the label. Most parents had no idea. The practice wasn't illegal until science caught up. Studies linked formaldehyde ingestion to cancer, respiratory issues, and immune damage. The FDA eventually cracked down, banning its use in food products by the late 70s. But by then, millions of babies had already swallowed spoonfuls of it. And the irony? Parents fed it to their kids because they trusted the packaging. If it's on the shelf, they thought, it must be safe. But not everything with a nice label was harmless. Some cheeses were literally crawling with live maggots, and people still ate them on purpose. Casu Marzu. Casu Marzu, a traditional Sardinian cheese intentionally infested with live maggots, was banned across the European Union. But that didn't stop it from making its way into immigrant kitchens and underground tastings in the US. The cheese is left out so flies can lay eggs inside. When the larvae hatch, they digest the fat, giving the cheese its soft, spreadable texture and a flavor some described as thrillingly alive. Yes, people ate it while the maggots were still squirming. Some even warned, "Cover your eyes, those things can jump." Legally, totally forbidden. Importing or selling Casu Marzu in the US violates multiple food safety laws. Even bringing a wedge through customs could lead to hefty fines. But back then, a few bites of illicit cheese felt like cultural pride, especially if you grew up with it. And if you think live maggots are bad, wait until you hear what was hiding in your childhood candy. Red dye number 2. If you grew up in the 1970s, you probably ate something red, bright, bold, and unforgettable. Jell-O, Kool-Aid, Tootsie Pops, cake frosting. They all got their eye-popping color from one source. Red dye number 2. It wasn't just a food coloring, it was a childhood signature. The brighter it looked, the more we wanted it. But in 1976, the FDA dropped a bombshell. After tests showed red dye number 2 caused cancer in lab rats, it was pulled from shelves overnight. Parents panicked. Schools tossed out snacks. Entire product lines were rebranded or recalled. The sudden ban sparked a national freakout, because by then, millions of American kids had already swallowed gallons of the stuff. And here's the wild part. Some countries still allow it today. But red number 2 wasn't the only sweet ingredient with a dark side. Another one promised no calories and might have traded sugar for something far worse. Cyclamate. In the 1970s, Americans were obsessed with sweetness, without the sugar. Enter Cyclamate, an artificial sweetener that was 30 times sweeter than sugar, but with 0 calories. It showed up in diet sodas, snack bars, even kids' toothpaste. One popular brand, Sweet and Low, yes, the little pink packet. At one point, Cyclamate was in over 4,000 products on American shelves. Then came the bad news. Studies in the late 60s linked Cyclamate to bladder cancer in rats. By 1970, the FDA banned it completely from foods and beverages. The backlash was intense. Many argued the science was flawed. Others missed the taste. And here's the twist. Cyclamate is still legal in over 100 countries, including Canada and most of Europe. So who was right? Hard to say. But one thing's for sure, the 1970s were full of flavors we thought were safe until they weren't. And while chemical additives raised red flags, some dangers came straight from the ocean, fresh, raw, and still on the half shell. Raw oyster platters. They called them ocean on the half shell. And in the 70s, raw oysters were served year-round with 0 hesitation. Forget the old rule about only eating oysters in months with an R. Thanks to refrigeration and fast shipping, oysters landed on plates in July just as often as January. But what diners didn't know was that warm water oysters, especially from the Gulf Coast, could harbor Vibrio vulnificus, a bacteria that can cause severe illness or even death. And raw oysters were the perfect vehicle. Today, regulations are strict. Some states outright ban raw oyster sales during summer months unless they're specially treated. Others require warning signs at restaurants. Still, in the 1970s, no one thought twice. Oysters were about elegance, not danger. And maybe that's the lesson of the era. We trusted the food on our plates until the rules changed, and changed everything. We just revisited 13 foods that were once perfectly normal in the 1970s, but would get you fined, shut down, or even jailed today. Some were tasty, some were risky, all were real. Which one surprised you the most, or brought back a buried memory? Let us know in the comments. And if this journey stirred something inside you, like, subscribe and share it with someone who remembers.